assessment. Okay. So when will a risk assessment is required is if there are significant hazards and risks for a particular activity, then we must carry out a risk assessment. So usually a risk assessment is a 5-step process, but there are, when you're doing a specific risk assessment, let's say for a working at height activity, or for a chemical risk assessment, or for a manual handling risk assessment, there could be, one or two additional steps. But when we say a generic risk assessment, as a minimum, any risk assessment will have these 5 steps. Okay. So step one, identify the hazard. Okay. So here, for example, the hazard is electricity, or the hazard is the use of the power tool. And then decide who could be harmed and how. Okay. So some hazard will only affect the person who is carrying out that task. For example, if I'm using a power tool, one of the hazard is vibration. Okay, the vibration from the tool will be transmitted to my body. Okay, so here this vibration hazard is only the hazard for that particular person who is using that tool, whereas noise is a hazard not just for the person who's using the tool, but noise is also a potential hazard for others who are nearby. Okay, so when you are deciding who could be harmed and how, you should look at all people who could be exposed to that hazard, like a fire. Okay, fire is a hazard that could affect all the occupants in the building, not just your employee. If there are any visitors in your building, any customers in your building, so all the people would be exposed or harmed from the fire hazard. So it is important to identify the people who might be harmed and how. Then we are going to evaluate the risk. Identify what are your current controls. Okay, you're saying fire is a hazard. What are the existing fire controls you have in place? You're saying the use of a power tool, the drill machine is a hazard. So what are the current controls that you have? Okay. Now you're going to assess your current controls. If your current controls are not adequate, then you're going to recommend further controls. So let's say in your current control, you identified that, the training certificate for that drill operator has expired 6 months back. So one of the additional controls that you're going to recommend is to immediately plan for a refresher training or a certification for the drill operator. Or in the current control, you identified that that particular drill machine, there is no proper record of maintenance. So the additional control you're going to recommend, you're going to implement a program of regular maintenance for the drill equipment. So and then we are going to record the findings. So risk assessment must be documented. It is not something which is, done verbally. So every finding from your step one, the hazards that you have identified, the people you have identified, or the controls, all this must be documented and then review regularly. Okay. So when is a good practice to review the assessment? Like it's a good practice every 12 months you have to come back to this document and review, or you may need to review before that 12 months following any circumstances. For example, there is an accident reported. So now you have to come and review this document because an accident occurrence clearly indicates your risk assessment is not adequate. Either you may have failed to identify that potential hazard, or you may have failed to assess your existing controls. So it clearly suggests that your risk assessment needs a review. Okay, or following any changes in the working conditions. Okay, or for example, if you're introducing a new equipment, you will have to review the risk assessment. Or if the same work is done in a different location, again we will have to review the risk assessment because there is a change. So any changes that could impact your your assessment, it must